Everyone, my name is Joshua Mariano. I'm a member of the Philippine Science High School System of the Philippines. I'm a student, and in the past 2 weeks, I've been working under Professor Fong V. Pham in the Physics Department of National Sun Yat-sen University in Taiwan. So, what I want to talk about today was the focus of the 2010 Nobel Prize in Physics, which is graphene. So, before we get into that, here's the outline of my discussion. First, I will be talking about what graphene is, followed by 2D materials, the synthesis methods for graphene, followed by its applications, and lastly, I want to round up the presentation with what lab facilities we have at the physics department at NSYSU. So, what exactly is graphene? Graphene is a two-dimensional material which consists of just a single layer of carbon atoms. It is arranged in a honeycomb lattice due to its sp2 bonds between the carbon atoms, as you can see in the figure here. It was first isolated and characterized in 2004 by Andrei Geim and Konstantin Novoselov. And 6 years later, their work on using the Scotch tape method to isolate and characterize graphene led to them being awarded the 2010 Nobel Prize in Physics. So, the figure on the right shows us how two-dimensional graphene can be manipulated to form zero-dimensional quantum dots, one-dimensional graphene nanoribbons, and also when you stack the graphene on top of each other, they form a 3D form of graphene. Now, graphene. In 2011, the BBC News branded graphene as a sort of miracle material. And why is that? Let's view some of the remarkable properties of graphene. Graphene has a 97% optical transparency, so it's almost transparent across the spectrum of light. It is lightweight because it's very thin at only 0.77 milligrams per square meter. It's very flexible, and its tensile strength is very high. It has a high surface area of 2,600 square meters per gram. It also has high electrical conductivity, thermal conductivity, and mechanical strength. It is also very highly permeable to gases and liquids. So our figures on the right show us the high tensile strength for graphene, while the other figure farther from me shows the light transmittance for graphene, so 97.7%. So, from all these properties, we will get into the uses of graphene later. But first, I want to establish that graphene is part of the family of 2D materials. The family of materials whose layers are one atom thick. So the figure shows us all of the available 2D materials that have been researched at the moment, and graphene is in the carbon family over there at the top. When you stack these different materials, you get 2D heterostructures, which are formed by putting them together, stacking them on top of each other in a particular sequence. And due to the high maneuverability and flexibility that you have with these materials being just one atom thick, they can be engineered to demonstrate various mechanical, electronic, optical, and chemical behaviors. So, now that we know just a little bit about graphene, let's talk about how you get graphene in the first place. So, in general, synthesis methods for graphene can be broken down into two. The first is our top-down methods. Our top-down methods are processes that break down larger materials into smaller graphene layers. These processes tend to produce more high-quality graphene. And their applications are more research-based because of the small amount of output that we get from our experiments. As such, they can be labor-intensive and time-consuming. So our graph on the right shows us the different methods under top-down and bottom-up. And we will be covering some of them later, so don't worry about that. In contrast, bottom-up methods do the exact opposite. They are processes that grow graphene from small carbon molecules towards graphene films. However, they have more defects and impurities, which affect their properties at a pure monolayer, one-layer scale. They are more appropriate for large-scale graphene production because they are cheaper, as you can see in the graph on the right. SIC and CVD, which we will cover later, are bottom-up methods. So, relatively lower quality than mechanical exfoliation, which is a top-down method, but the price is also lower. So, let's look at a few top-down methods for graphene synthesis. The first one is mechanical exfoliation. Our Nobel laureates in 2004 developed the Scotch tape method, which is the first ever method used to produce graphene. It was done by repeatedly peeling graphene layers apart using adhesive tape. Who would have known? And the final output were graphene flakes. However, it is generally a slow and imprecise method. It is very hard to reproduce. In the present, however, mechanical exfoliation has been improved by AFM tips, which are atomic force microscopes. So you can have a very small blade that exfoliates your graphene. Second, sonication exfoliation. When graphene is suspended in liquid and subjected to ultrasonic waves, they are damaged by the energy that these waves produce. So your graphite, which is your macro scale of graphene, is broken down into your graphene flakes. Your commonly used solvents for these include water, ethanol, isopropanol, and N-methyl pyrrolidone, NMP. However, in the figure on the right, it shows our sonication exfoliation for graphite in SMNs, which are silk fibril nanofibers. Moving on, let's look at electrochemical exfoliation. Here, graphite is used as electrodes in an electrolyte solution. You apply a current, and after a few minutes, you should observe a black material at the anode once you start electrolysis. Post-processing steps after collecting the black material shows us that these materials are graphene flakes. Our figure on the right shows us a demonstration of electrochemical exfoliation of graphene in a 1% sodium dodecyl sulfate solution. The final top-down method that we will study for today is reduced graphene oxide. Graphene oxide is relatively easy to produce, but because of the presence of the oxygen groups, its properties are not as strong or as compared to pure graphene. As such, there are several ways to reduce graphene oxide into graphene, including chemical, thermal, and electrochemical means. Next, it's a bit heavy, so let's go down to our bottom-up methods. There are two major bottom-up methods in which researchers find highly applicable in their studies. The first is chemical vapor deposition. It is used for large-scale production of high-quality graphene. It involves combining a gas molecule, and as seen in the figure, methane and hydrogen, while using a surface substrate. So there's your copper on top as a catalyst. And the machine that you perform chemical vapor deposition with is able to control your temperature, pressure, and the flow rate of the gases moving into the chamber. Depending on the activation method for the gas, CVD may either be thermal or plasma enhanced. So in thermal CVD, the decomposition of the gas is based on the heat that you apply to it, while in the latter, you use plasma to excite the ions in the gases so that they are more reactive. And because of that, your graphene grows on top of the copper catalyst. The final graphene synthesis method that we will cover for today is epitaxial growth. It is used to produce crystalline layers on a crystalline substrate. So we have silicon carbide in the figure on the right, where the deposited layer follows the structure of the substrate. So it's generally more organized as a graphene synthesis method, that your output is more organized in its crystalline structure. You're annealing your silicon carbide causes the silicon atoms to exit the crystal, which leaves your layer of carbon and graphene as a result. The carbon islands formed through nucleation eventually merge into one continuous graphene layer, as seen in the figure. So that was quite heavy. So let's look at the applications of graphene. There are many applications of graphene, but we decided to limit them to three various fields. The first field is in electronics. Graphene is highly applicable in electronics. One study found that you could create ultra-flexible, conductive, and machine-washable e-textiles from graphene-based materials. Graphene is also used to create gas sensors for ammonia, nitrogen dioxide, and hydrogen, which is important for workplace safety, especially if you're working in a lab. Finally, the final application of graphene in electronics is that we can use them in LEDs with enhanced luminance and external quantum efficiency, which is a general measure for how efficient your LEDs are. So our figure on the right shows the current efficiency versus the luminance of three types of OLEDs. So you can see that the graphene-based LEDs are in general more efficient than those that aren't. Moving on to the next field, let's focus on graphene's applications in biomedicine. Graphene can be used for biosensors. And the studies that I found focus on the isolation of circulating tumor cells, which is important for stopping metastasis, and also for the early detection of Zika virus infection. You can also use graphene-based materials in tissue engineering because they improve both the mechanical properties of hydrogel and the wound healing effects of chitosan PVA, which are both essential materials in tissue engineering. Finally, drug delivery has its applications as well from graphene by focusing on drug solubility, targeted delivery, and intracellular release. So your drugs in general become more efficient because of your incorporation of graphene. And the final field that I want to talk about is energy. So solar cells that were based on graphene were found to have an improved power conversion efficiency. You could also create better batteries based lithium-ion, lithium sulfur, and lithium oxide batteries. Finally, graphene can also be used as a photocatalyst for water splitting, which is essential for hydrogen production. And hydrogen, as you know, is a very important renewable energy source. Finally, to cap off my discussion, I want to talk about the laboratory facilities at NSYSU. So first, Professor introduced me to Mendelian origin, which were important tools for reference management and for data analysis, respectively. Now, for the hardware, first we'll look at our air drying cabinet, our weighing scale, and our dry oven. They're mostly self-explanatory. Your air drying cabinet is used to store moisture-sensitive materials to protect them from decay. Your weighing scale is used to accurately measure your substances. And finally, your dry oven is used to remove moisture or solvents from materials through controlled heating. The next piece of equipment that I want to talk about is your hot plate, which is multifunctional because you can use it to mix liquids while achieving temperature control. So in the first picture, we're heating silicon to 50 degrees Celsius to dry it, and from the water that we put on it. And in second, we stir the liquid at 400 rotations per minute. The next piece of equipment I want to talk about is our 4-point probing measurement system. So it's used to accurately measure the electrical resistance of a material. So in this setup, we use titanium oxide, which is a semiconductor. Here, I don't know if you can see it. It has 4 probes. The 2 outer probes apply a current to the sample, while the 2 inner probes measure the voltage across a specific distance. So the voltage drop tells us a little bit about the resistance of the material. Next, I want to talk about the spin coater. It's used to deposit thin and uniform films of materials onto a substrate. So the solution is evenly spread across the substrate because of the centrifugal forces from rapid rotation. It results in a uniform film once the substrate evaporates on your film. Finally, the last piece of equipment I want to talk about is the CVD machine. It's used to perform chemical vapor deposition. So the main components that I'm able to point out to you at the moment, because this CVD setup is not complete, is that your reaction chamber, this one, and your gas flow control, this one. It's used to control the inflow and outflow of gases such as argon, hydrogen, and methane, which we mentioned in the CVDs in our discussion about CVD earlier. And finally, you have your control panel here to control your temperature, your pressure, and your gas flow rates. There's also a temperature manipulation button here. Yeah. To cap off, I want to thank Professor Pham for pushing me to